Hello everyone! Welcome to our Usapang Maka-Estudyante. I am Jude together with...
Yes, hello Sir Jude. I am Francis, and I'm hoping that we can still educate our students despite the pandemic.
Speaking of, I heard that some educational institutions took initiative to offer vaccination especially for the students.
Well, that's lovely. That's why we must encourage our students.
And please help each and everyone by participating to the vaccination effort of our government.
Anyway, can you give our listeners some glimpse about what we'll be talking for today?
Actually, we are fortunate to have this article because it entirely discusses the utilization of student-centered approach in the educative process.
Yeah, and I think our guests for today, together with us, will share their thoughts and experiences regarding our topic in this episode.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, for today we have Mom Sarah, Mom Angelica, Mom Raven, and Mom Clarice.
Definitely yes, Sir Jude. They are all gorgeous and kinda smart. By the way, for the information of our listeners, they're all pre-service teachers coming from what department, Sir Jude?
From the Social Studies Department, sir.
I think they are all knowledgeable about the article that we'll be talking for today, right, sir?
Yes, as I've said, we are also lucky to have this article titled Mind, Brain, and Education, authored by Christina Hinton, Kurt W. Fisher, and Catherine Glennon.
And I think our guests better know the authors that you have mentioned, Sir Jude.
Actually, I asked them before and I am confident that it is better to let them introduce the authors as well as their backgrounds and objectives in writing the said article.
Well, that's kinda interesting to hear. Right, Ma'am Sarah?
Yes, I think so. Anyway, let me give this opportunity to Ma'am Angelica and Ma'am Clarice in introducing the authors.
Thank you, Ma'am Sarah, Sir Jude, and Sir Francis. So let us introduce our distinguished, prominent, and highly qualified authors for today's Usapang Maka-Estudyante.
Thank you, Ma'am Angelica. To begin with, we have Christina Hinton, EDD. She works on issues at the nexus of neuroscience and education at Harvard Graduate School of Education and has authored many articles and book chapters on educational neuroscience.
Next, we also have Kurt W. Fisher, PhD, a Charles Bigelow Professor of Education and the Director of the Mind, Brain, and Education Program at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. He studies cognitive and emotional development and learning from birth through adulthood, that combining analysis of the commonalities across people with the diversity of pathways of learning and development.
And lastly, we have Catherine Glennon, EDM. She earned a master's degree from the Mind, Brain, and Education program at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. She is a cognitive development research specialist at Harvard, researching developmental pathways of perspective taking, complex reasoning, and student engagement.
Yes, that's right. With this lineup of authors, Ma'am Clarice, we are indeed fortunate to have highly reliable and relevant sources of wisdom about student-centered learning from the perspective of transdisciplinary research in mind, brain, and education.
That's right, Ma'am Angelica. And have you heard that they emphasize how human biology and cognitive and behavioral sciences contributes to the understanding and investigation of human learning and development?
Oh really? Well, I am very much interested as they explain how students learn, what motivates them to learn, and what is the role of emotion in learning.
Exactly. It is high time to consider student-centered learning approaches in light of mind, brain, and education research to illuminate and support how learning and development work for us, for our students, given our individual differences.
Yes, I agree with you, as this creates a transdisciplinary learning science that can inform education policy and practice, as well as answer questions with a dynamic interaction between scientific research and practical knowledge about the mind, brain, and education.
Well, that's nice to hear. Thank you so much for introducing our authors.
With that, I think we can now move forward in discussing the mind, brain, and education.
Okay, I think I'll be the one to open the market in exchanging of ideas. We all believe that the students are integral ingredients in building an ideal society. We often associate them in the word hope. Indeed, we always tell them that kayo ang pag-asa ng bayan.
That's the reason why we should put the students in the center of the educative process.
Yes, and it can only be accomplished if we will use student-centered approach in teaching. In this approach, education provides flexible learning experiences that enable students at various levels to build toward mastery of a common set of core skills. A commitment to addressing the individual needs and goals of its student is at the core of the model.
Yeah, students are empowered to follow customized learning pathways that meet their particular needs and interests as they build their expertise.
Yeah, and I think we pre-service teachers or the full-fledged teachers have the fundamental goal in making it, not just an imaginary goal, but a truthful objective.
That's right.
The good thing about it, student-centered learning helps the students to build two things: self-confidence and motivation through learning experiences that match their abilities and interests, with the ultimate goal of supporting them to become self-directed learners.
And another fundamental element of student-centered learning approach is that it is not restricted to the confines of traditional classroom or school hours. Rather, it transpires in multiple dimensions of a student's life.
It is significant because it is very applicable, especially in our current situation. Obviously, we are not allowed to conduct, face-to-face classes because of the threats brought by the COVID-19.
Yes, actually, that's the tragic impact of the pandemic in the education. With this, we can really see that community plays a crucial role in helping the students to be educated in this time.
And educators include not only teachers but also the parents, community members, and professionals. The approaches resonate with the Nigerian proverb, "It takes a village to raise a child."
Sir Jude and Ma'am Sarah, student learning should be supported by a range of adults in multiple contexts.
In general point of view, student-centered learning approaches compose of a flexible system designed to help students from all backgrounds succeed academically.
Sir, since you have tackled the student-centered learning, do you have any idea on how individual brain learns, or are you at least familiar with the story of Tarzan?
I think our brain learns through our own experiences, and for the story of Tarzan, I am familiar with it. Is it about the boy who was accidentally left in the forest and was raised by the apes?
Yes, you're right that our brain learns through our experiences, and since you're familiar with Tarzan's story, we can actually relate it on how our brain learns. Believe it or not, there is actually a real-life Tarzan. I remember in 2018, I have actually watched the full documentary about Vietnamese man named Hu Van Lang, who was dubbed as the real-life Tarzan. During the war, his father took him and they hid in the jungle. And at that time, he was only 1 year old. For that reason, the life that he knew was only the life in the jungle. So, when they were found in 2013, he and his father suffers greatly from culture shock because they have no idea on how to live with people. But through the help of their family, Hovan Lang actually adapts to the modern world. Slowly, he learns how to wear proper clothes, how to communicate and interact with people, and how to be friendly with animals without harming them. So, in the case of Huban Lang, we can actually prove that our brain is highly adaptive to the environment that we lived in. Actually, this phenomenon is interconnected with the plasticity of our brain.
Yes, it is absolutely real because scientists proven that neurons in our brains can have the capacity to do reorganization in areas of our brains which can be triggered by our learning experiences.
Yeah, that's why when we are actively engaged to certain things, it will strengthen our brain input in that area. I remember Sir De La Cruz always told us that when we do not use our brains, it will become smaller. Actually, this supports the evidence that certain part of our brain is enlarged when we are good at something. Sir Francis, do you know someone who can play a guitar or any musical instrument?
Yes, actually one of my friends is a guitarist in our church.
Oh well, according to scientists, they have a larger auditory and somatosensory complex than those who are not physically inclined. Also, those people who are good at space matter have a larger hippocampus. That's why, as a teacher, we must learn how to make our students actively engage with the situation, rather than making them passive learners only. In this way, we can help them to develop their full potential and have a meaningful learning experiences.
And for us to develop the full potential of each student, we should realize that every one of us is unique. Even in our family or relatives, though we share the same bloodline, we still have these unlike behaviors, attitudes, and actions when we interact, right? And in the same way, our brains operate distinctively, especially when we are in a certain environment that forces our evident and latent capabilities to function. These experiences are all inclined with how brain works, and when we are actively engaged with that experiences, it will soon improve. And that was previously highlighted by your statement from Sarah.
Yes, just like what Tarzan did when he adapted to his environment.
To describe clearly how the brain works and functions differently, here is a personal example of mine that you might want to hear. Most of my siblings are not good in studying and comprehending, yet I have this passion to study and great confidence in communication, which makes us unlike to each other. Though we have the same environment in our house, I still manage to change my perspective of learning, since I am more exposed to environment that has more passion to study, such as in school and with my peers. And Ma'am Angelica, do you mind me asking if you have the same scenarios with your siblings? In terms of language, are there any differences with how your brother or sister communicate with you and use language?
Yes, indeed. You know what, Sir Francis, in our family, not just with my siblings, but also with the other members of our family, have this indistinct way of communicating our accent and manner of saying words.
In school, we can similarly observe that students have strengths and limitations. Some may struggle in mathematics or numbers, yet perform proficiently in communication and language.
Yes, that's correct. Garner multiple intelligence can be a good theory to prove that, Sir Francis, because Gardner believes that we are all different in terms of intellectual capabilities. One might be linguistically intelligent, and some may be good in logical mathematical knowledge.
In addition to that, some may not thrive in academics yet excel in extracurricular activities, such as dancing, singing, and sport, which are under the bodily kinesthetic intelligences. Also in schools, especially before, students are grouped homogeneously. They were placed in a section which most of the learners demonstrate similar intelligences, capabilities, and strengths. In Filipino, we call them cream section or cream students, or maybe section 1. Or simply, we call them matatalinos. And since they are a group of students that are exceptionally intelligent or matatalino, of course, there are also a group of students that are called lower section or lower students, and maybe section 2 or 3. However, through time, teachers observe that those kind of mixtures of students in classroom does not promote quality education, because it is best and ideal for the students to be grouped heterogeneously, where they can interact and share experiences to other students with different intelligences. And that heterogeneous mixture of students allows the teachers in helping the students yields their own strength. For that reason, we should not shortly make judgment of students' incapability because somehow and in some way they have their own exceptional intelligences. That is why also we should not call the students a slow learner because maybe they're intellectually capable in other things that we cannot imagine.
You're actually right, sir, because the similarity is principle of nature, that each student is distinct in terms of cognitive, ability, motivation, styles, needs, interests, and potential. Every person has individuality, and each learner's unique characteristic and learning strategies, such as people with a target language to acquire.
Exactly, Ma'am Bermudo. And in addition to that, there are individual differences such as degree and duration of sensitive periods. Some individuals are able to master almost all aspects of non-native language into adulthood, while on the other hand, it is greater advantage for some children if they learn the non-native language or other second language earlier. And they will learn more about the specific aspect such as accent and grammar.
Aside from that, sir, they also believe that children learn language faster than adults, while the adults may require more time and effort compared to children in learning a second language. That's why individual differences affect the acquisition of learners and they are reflected in their learning styles and learning strategies.
Yes, Ma'am Angelica, you made a good point there. People seem to get close to native speaker levels of proficiency in a foreign language, while the others never seem to get much further than a beginner's level. Also, some language learners progress quickly and appear to have little or much trouble, but the others progress slowly and have extreme difficulty.
You have a nice point, sir. Well, the explanation is that humans are not all alike. We have our own distinct personalities, approaches, style, and strategy. Every human being is given skills in adapting different languages. It is based on us on how we are eager to learn other languages. But let us all remember that a person's intelligence is not measured by the amount of language we know. Thus, it is most important to respect each other because we have our own individual differences.
Thank you, Ma'am Angelica. In relation to that, biological evolution has overtaken by cultural evolution, and this has provided the brain with certain predisposition such as the capacity for language learning. But how about the side of cultural invention?
Yes, Ma'am Raven. The cultural invention, literacy, and I think the formal mathematics are not absorbed in our brain's genetic blueprint, but due to its flexibility, it can adapt to create complex networks that support cultural knowledge.
Yeah, that's right, Ma'am Clarice. Let's focus to the best example of this, which is the literacy, where our brain is genetically programmed to learn language. It also goes through a series of experience-dependent changes. Just like computer, we also have networks, such as reading network, in our brain structure that are naturally drawn to support our language, such as the motor speech area and comprehension or the critical thinking area. So as students read, certain areas may also vary based on experiences that focus on the level of the word. So the dual root theory is a processing occurs in two different complementary paths of converting letters into sounds, while the other one consists of direct transfer from word to meaning that involve the visual word area. Many areas involved in reading are shared across language, such as the English native, that has inconsistent between letters and sounds. As to this, it has a combination of phonetic decoding and the whole word recognition. So, can you give us an insight about Italian natives, Ma'am Clarice?
Yes, I think the Italian natives have consistent match between letters and sounds. As to this, they rely on phonetic decoding less on the visual word form area, and they use this network to read in English, which results to differences in learning experiences.
Gracias, Ma'am Clarice. Spanish and Hindi has a similar network also, which they have highly consistent match between letters and sounds. Non-alphabetic language also rises in the brain network, such as Chinese native, that involves in both, which is central in alphabetic language. However, in Chinese reader, it involves certain areas such as the spatial information. They are part because of spatial complexity of Chinese, because of their idioms. Brain illustrates that there are individual differences in reading networks based on experience learning to read in a particular language. More broadly, it is shown that the brain is shaped by experience to give rise to individual differences.
I think we're not just talking about literacy here, right, guys? But also with the math in the brain.
Yeah, it is somehow funny because, I can personally relate to it. A lot of students refuse to learn math or thinking, that I'm not capable of learning math.
I agree with you, Sergio. Okay, let me ask you a simple math question. 8 plus 9 is equal to, yes, 17. But how did you know that it's 17? Is it about simple recall, memorization, or mental calculation? But guys, do not worry. The way we answer it may vary as we have different brain structures and neutral circuitry that the mathematics in the brain deals with.
Oh, is that so? I thought mathematics is only an academic subject.
Alright, mathematics is not only a highly relevant core academic subject, but it can also describe how our abilities are created in the brain, and it illustrates how learning experiences shape the brain. So yes, even in our brains, that is there. And this helps us develop a quantitative and intuitive sense and skills to learn and understand the world around us.
So mathematics in the brain has an impact on our learning and development.
That's right. So we should not be afraid about math. Remember the notion of multiple abilities? Math supports that. I myself struggles with math, but my sister is an engineer and my father was a graduate of BS Commerce. It's like joining MTAP or math competitions when I was younger is a thing of my past now. But I excel in my linguistic and visual spatial skills. So see, our talent or deficit in math will not define us.
So, even our individual differences affects mathematics in our brain?
Yes, that's right. Because we have different genetic tendencies and experiences as well as strengths and weaknesses. So, as a pre-service teacher, we must also ensure that our learning activities are challenging but not threatening to the students to amplify active learning and explore how different instructional methods influence mathematics in the brain for student-centered approaches to learning, as our brain can be shaped by these learning experiences. Because you never know, we can be potential geniuses.
Indeed. So the instruction should be student-centered and aligned with mind, brain, and education to maximize our potentials.
I agree, because we can use this to make sound decisions about education practices and interventions to gather a holistic and empirical view to support learning and development. With this, let me leave you with the saying, the only way to learn mathematics is to do mathematics.
Exactly, from the word do. This is what I'm telling you about the student-centered approach, that learning is more attainable or achievable by doing things.
Yes, and it is important because it prepares the students in real-life scenario where they can apply their learnings.
But wait, guys. By the way, may I ask you a question? Are your emotions stable on your situation right now? Alright. All learnings has an emotional base according to Plato 2000 years ago. We feel, therefore we learn. Emotion activates a vast network of brain regions which are involved in learning. So when a student has a learning experience, emotion and cognition operates smoothly in the brain.
Smooth like our cars.
Yup, that's right. Like a car. Emotion serves as a steering wheel to direct learning. Students' emotion experience become important that guides future learning and decision making. So an example of this is myself, where I am a fan of Korean dramas, watching non-stop where night or day, but the following day we have a quarter exam. Thinking of this, I choose to watch drama instead of reviewing, and as a result, I failed that exam and regret what I did. So leading me to a realization that there will always be a time to study and a time to watch dramas. You see, emotion directs students' learning process, helping them gravitate toward positive situation and away from the negative ones. However, there is an evidence. Anybody?
Yes, Ma'am Raven. Some strongest neuroscience evidence that emotions guide cognition and learning arise from patients with lesion in areas of the brain involved in emotion.
That's correct, Ma'am Angelica. Example of that is a personal story of mine that I want to share. It is a story of my lolo who has a bit of a problem with his brain, specifically his vein in the brain, which caused him a bit of memory loss. So at the hospital, the last day of his hospitalization, my lolo needs to sign a paper. And by signing that, my lola helps him. While my lolo is signing, he asks my lola, asking what is his name. Surprisingly, we are all shocked in the room. When he asked that, he looked at me and stared blankly at me while I'm crying. The following day, we are thankful that he was okay and back to the normal lolo we know. You see, like in this experience, the brain uses emotion to effectively guide learning, tagging experience as either positive and worth approaching or aversive and worth avoiding. Moving on, education can support the development of emotion regulation skills, and this should be a priority as emotional regulation skill strongly predict academic achievement. Recent research suggests that one of the main differences between disadvantaged students who succeed in school and those who do not in their ability to regulate emotions.
Exactly. So, educators are inherently involved in emotional development if they are involved in intellectual development.
Yes, that's right, Ma'am Clarice. And emotion is recognized as important in student-centered learning approaches. Such approaches necessitate surrounding each student with a supportive community of educators that boost student motivation. Speaking of motivation, are you motivated, guy? I see. Because emotion drives motivation in the brain. Most of the motivational neuroscience research has focused on animal studies that could capture the subjective experience of human or basic motivation.
Speaking of humans, are we all humans here, right, guys? Because I heard some static sounds coming from your voices. I'm just kidding. Extensive research has revealed that many students hold one of two distinct attitudes toward intelligence. And one attitude known as entity, where students treat intelligence as if it were fixed. A student is neither smart or not. What is the other one, Ma'am Raven?
The other one, students believe that intelligence is achieved incremental. Working hard to learn can help the student become smarter. They claim that incremental theory of intelligence is more likely to hold up in the face of hardship and to use mistakes as a learning experiences.
Anyway, I know that we are all facing different difficulties, maybe about academics or about your personal life, but teachers, may I know, do you feel stress?
Thank you for that question, Sir Jude. Well, stress is another important word in the context of education. They said that low level of stress can be useful or tolerable and may even help in motivation, while high levels of frequent prolonged stress, on the other hand, can be toxic to the brain.
Well, positive stress is characterized by short-term stress responses, such as brief increase in heart rate or mild changes in stress hormones such as cortisol.
Guys, do not worry. This kind of stress is a normal part of life, which could be tolerable or toxic.
I agree, but stress itself has an effect on the brain's physical architecture, and it causes quantifiable changes in the brain areas centrally involved in learning, such as the hippocampus, which can result in learning difficulties.
That's right. These stress responses have the potential to disrupt learning. Furthermore, it can take the form of a problematic, aggressive attitude that harms students' relationship with teachers and peers.
Since we're talking about emotions, how about relationship?
Ooh, relationships. Okay. Learning and emotions take place in an environment of relationships. And the human brain is primed for emotional bonding, which support learning. So the brain is wired to feel empathy, which intimately connects people to one another's experiences.
So let me construct my idea. So this mirror neuron system is like an imitation process that supports system for bonding and learning, right?
That's right, Sir Jude. It prepares students to be attuned to and bond with others, which sustains interaction with adults and peers that promote learning, especially through scaffolding. These types of social interactions are fundamental to learning environment that promotes positive relationship and a sense of community. Therefore, it promotes learning.
And speaking of learning, actually not just learning but with S, learnings. Because this exchange of ideas that we are doing right now really constitutes abundant learnings. We learned not only about the facts stated in the article but as well as to our personal experiences that we've shared.
Yes, definitely. And all I can say is that we had the best choice of article here. It is not only a well-written article but undeniably a timely topic that should be discussed.
Yeah, actually the Mind, Brain, and Education was a great paper to read. It really emphasizes how vital is the student-centered approach in learning. Also, it discusses how the brain learns, where it connects it on the individual differences, language learning, literacy and mathematics in the brain, and emotional learning.
In a manner that everything was written clearly in a sequential pattern, though there are some words that not familiar to me because it is more on the field of science. Yes, that's true. Actually, the author really did write well all the information.
Same thoughts with you, Ma'am Angelica. I can actually relate to that because when I first read this paper, there are words or parts that I find it hard to understand. But after reading it many times and analyzing it, I gain insights on what the authors want us to learn or realize, their purpose, the paper's essence, as well as its role in our education system.
Indeed, the authors explain well the content of the paper because it is the field that they are expert. All of them are trustworthy enough to write articles about mind, brain, and education.
Yeah, in my part, I have really learned a lot through it. As a pre-service teacher, we can actually apply it to our field because it discusses well how we will teach students at our best.
And it taught some ideas on how we can develop and improve our pedagogy when we are already in the field and in practice, because sooner or later we will be deployed in a way that they will learn the way they wanted, and for that reason learnings will impart to them.
So guys, if you have an opportunity, would you recommend this article to others?
Of course, I will definitely recommend it, especially to people who aspire to be an educator, because it will equip them to better understand how the mind and brain works in education.
Yes, exactly. And another thing is that it will be a good source of information on how teacher can handle classroom issues and student with inclusivity and higher realization of their differences.
Well, that's lovely. Anyway, I just want to take this opportunity to thank our visitors slash guests slash our pre-service teachers of social studies in this today's podcast.
And I hope that this will not be the last time that we'll be sharing our experiences and knowledge regarding a certain matter, such as education, especially if it is for our future students.
Also, to our listeners, thank you so much. Until our next episode, only here at
Usapang Maka Estudyante.